of all, thank you for all those who have joined on time. Welcome to this call. A very exciting discussion ahead. It's a big, one of the big topics for the ICT world, the digital world, and of course, through this webinar, we'll bring out why it's a topic for every one of us, whether or not we sit within that sector. So I'm joined today. My name is Shafqez Mahmood. I'm the MENA partner for Outvise. Outvise is a ICT-focused talent platform, which is very active already in the Middle East region. It started off with operations in Europe, headquartered out of Barcelona, but it's getting active within the MENA region. And we are hosting this together with our colleagues from Fiber Connect Council MENA. And we have some really experienced, very exciting list of panelists here. I'm going to introduce them or request them also to chip in as I go through each of them. So John is a tech and data advisor. He's been collaborating with Outvise for a number of years as well. John works extensively on different smart city projects and already working within the Middle East and Europe. He's an enterprise architecture and data governance specialist by background, and he's worked on both global and national systems. John, feel free to add anything if I've missed out, but hopefully that is a very short summary of the great experience you bring to us. Then I'm also joined by Dr. Hussam Al-Masri. Dr. Hussam is an IoT and smart cities expert. He's based out of the Middle East itself, and he's a project manager at Khatib and Almi, focusing on IoT and smart cities. Dr. Hussam is also a member of the Smart Cities Committee within the Fiber Connect Council MENA. Last but not least, we're joined by Mohammed Seer, who is a partner within EY. Mohammed has been heading digital governance, public sector consulting for Middle East and Middle East and Africa, and very recently has also taken up a role of the startup leader for the Middle East and North Africa region. So welcome all to the call, and just to, before I go any further, just in terms of the webinar agenda and plan. So we've got an hour together, another 56 minutes to be precise. The way we have planned it is we will go through some set of, let's say, agenda items where each of the panelists will give an overview, but then we are hoping to move on to the Q&A part of the webinar in the next 25 minutes or so that we make it as interactive and as discussion focused as we can. So without further, let's say, any further time spent on introductions, I would request each of the panelists to perhaps just introduce themselves when they start answering questions. I'll just briefly go over the questions that we are planning to cover in the first 30 minutes, and then please do sort of start jotting down any questions that you would like to ask the panelists after these questions are answered by them. So we are going to talk about why smart cities in the first place, what's the purpose of having smart cities. Then we'll go over the key enablers and the planning and implementation that goes into putting in place smart cities. Then we'll understand from the panelists what are their thoughts on the progress made, particularly within the MENA region. And this is all in the context of 5G, which is obviously, accelerating things for everywhere across the globe, and particularly in the MENA region, which has been one of the early adopters of 5G as well. And then there is John and then Dr. Hussam are going to talk about some of the challenges that we still see in the adoption of smart cities, as well as how can we accelerate them. So these are the topics that we will be covering off today. And I would like to now get started with inviting Mohammed Seer to tell us why do we need smart cities, and from his experience, what constitutes a smart city in the first place.
Thank you,
Mohammed,
Shafqez.
over to you.
Thank you, Shafqez, and it's a great pleasure to be here, and hopefully we'll have a great discussion amongst us. The why question is quite an important one, often gets missed. And as you've heard me many times before talk about this notion of being purpose-led or taking a purpose-first-led approach versus a technology-first-led approach, which often we see in smart city initiatives. It starts with, let's look at creating a platform and let's just drive, and we start to go ahead, and we find the value that smart cities can unlock is then missed. So to truly unlock a smart city value proposition, the answering the why question is extremely important. On a generic level, you can say there are 3, 4, maybe 5 different possibilities of why a smart city is the right answers for government to pursue with. One, which is very dear to my heart, is the citizen lens, the user lens, how the experience of citizens, businesses, visitors, anyone coming into that city can be enhanced by using the whole framework and concepts that we talk about when we talk about smart cities. And of course, data is at the center of that. So the quality of life can potentially be enhanced in a big way. Security, protection for citizens, for users, all those kind of things. Another perspective you can say is about saving costs. So the why question in some countries may be that we have very high cost of running our city and we want to drive the cost down, bring operational efficiencies. And by, of course, looking at a smart city concept, you use data for a lot of decision-making purposes and for even, creating future routes of buses or traffic flows, street lights, whatever that may be. As a city, everything and anything is possible to be managed in a smarter way. You can also look at it from a perspective of competitive advantage. Many cities around the world are being able to attract more in foreign investment or interest for doing business with them, because it's easy to move about and live and do work, set up your offices, whatever that may be. And of course, better policy and decision making when it comes to governance of a city. And that's a very big part, because more data you have, more information, more insights you have, that allows you to, of course, make more data-driven decisions that are in time, real-time decision-making, which helps. And of course, on top of that, you can automate a lot of the decision-making, a lot of the processes that take place when it's running of the city. And I like to kind of put as an umbrella on top of all of this, which is a very important topic of today, which is the whole ECG. So looking at the sustainability agenda from an environment, social, and governance perspective. A smart city construct can obviously make a big leap forward to creating a city more sustainable, more sociable for people to live in. And of course, the governance itself could be much better from using data and the different technologies around smart cities. So that's how I would frame the why question. But of course, for each city or each country, the priority of each one of these may be different. You may find certain countries will take a view that they just want to look at the efficiency angle. They don't want to really worry too much about the experience side. Others may want to go it from a more citizen experience perspective and say that's the main driver for why they want to have. But absolutely, it's the right answer, because it does really make our life much better when we are living and working in smart cities. So that's how I would frame this whole the question of why smart cities is the right answer.
Great, thank you so much, Mohammed. So I think the key point there was that obviously there is a lot of data, and it is about how we can take advantage of all that to make citizen experience and lives better. And what we are finding with 5G is that it's the first time within the evolution of the telecom technology that the technology is ahead of the demand side, right? So there is a lot of opportunity that 5G presents. And with that, I would like to invite Dr. Hussam to talk about what are the key enablers and standards required of a smart city, and how can 5G help achieve this?
Thank you, Chapez, for this introduction. And let me tell you about the smart city. Usually, it's a mobile function. It's not a fixed function. Therefore, all citizens need mobility. So therefore, 5G provides a key enabler, in fact, to the whole smart city citizens and residents. So therefore, by providing enhanced mobile broadband access to smartphones and any portable device in the city, also it provides ultra-reliable, low-latency communication for mission-critical systems, such as smart mobility with vehicle to everything, or autonomous vehicle, in fact. And also part of the 5G generation. So there is the low power wide area network evolution started by Sigfox, LTE for machines, narrowband IoT, LoRaWAN. This to provide connectivity for the massive number of devices, massive IoT devices and sensors. Low-cost sensors are also key enabler in the whole network to be distributed all around the city, to let the city be as a cost-effective city for everybody, and to let the government or let the manager of this smart city deal with the insights coming for different function of the city. We need to build the decision-making real-time and at the edge of the network. This means that to let the sensor itself take the decision. Therefore, edge computing is also a key enabler in this aspect. Also, to facilitate the management of the insights, indicators, key performance indicators, all the measurement collected from these sensors or functions within the city should be manipulated into a centralized platform within a municipality area, into the government, into the decision-making premises. So this platform use the digital twin technology. Digital twin technology is to simulate the physical infrastructure at the edge of the city. I mean, the data collection from the sensors, from the devices, any mobile device, car, whatever is moving in the city should be simulated by digital twin into this platform. Also, blockchain is an important up-to-date technology. In fact, this is still in the development phase. Blockchain is used for solving privacy and security issue within IoT devices. Of course, in the city functions, the infrastructure of the smart city itself contain many type of systems. I'll mention some of them as an example. Smart mobility, like intelligent transportation system. You have smart health, like telemedicine. You have a smart environment, like waste management system, energy distribution management. Every system in the city is working as a standalone system. But to integrate the operation between all these systems together, building standards and open API to integrate the operation system of this infrastructure into one platform is needed. Therefore, standard is a key enabler also to the smart city functions. Also, government and local entities, they don't have ability currently, or usually they don't have the ability or the expertise, the technical expertise to build such a city with this different type of infrastructure. Therefore, they need to build partnership with the private sector. Means that the ICT enterprise, who are specialized in the development of these systems, build the alliances with academies to build the studies and cooperate with the standards institutions to build roadmaps, guidelines, and help also to get the help of them in building regulations and rules. Regulations and rules are very important also as a key enabler to let the government or the local authorities to organize the relationship, the interrelationship between the function, the official functions of the city, the administrations of the cities together, all interrelated. So they need to have to legalize this relationship between them. Also to legalize the access of the citizen toward the function of the city. This means that the regulations and rules are very important also to organize all this interoperability. So these are the key enablers, and also how we need 5G due to its capacity, in fact, its capacity and bandwidth and the speed of data it gives to mobility inside the city.
Great. Thank you so much for that detailed response.
Excuse me, I will, if you go ahead to the standards itself, I will explain a little bit about the standards.
Yeah,
nowadays, we have 4 major entities who are dealing with standards. I'll explain one by one in brief so that I will not take a long time. ITU, for example, they are building a society, a specialized society named ITU-T SG20. They are specialized in building standards to interoperate or to regulate the interoperability functions and connectivity between IoT devices or IoT components, artificial intelligence systems, smart city functions. All entities inside the smart city should be under standards, and ITU, they are working on this. IEC, they are building the standards for every smart system inside the city. This means smart mobility as alone, they need a standard. As a smart environment, they need also a standard. So the interaction between both systems is handled by IEC in order to certify and to assess the performance of every system as is. ISO also, they are working also on the standardization of guidelines. And they are building roadmaps for planning the smart cities and developing smart cities. They are concentrating on measuring the performance of the city by establishing a standard KPI, a standard KPI to measure the maturity of the city toward a smart city. IEEE also is contributing to this work, working on artificial intelligence enabled systems alone. So they are specialized in this part. So therefore, all these 4 entities, they should work all together. So to avoid this duplication in building the standards and everybody doing the same job, so they are constituting now the World Smart City Forum to organize this work, which is very important, as I mentioned before.
Great. So next question is, basically what we have learned from you, Dr. Hussam, is that there is a comprehensive body of knowledge which has evolved, and there is obviously all these standards which have come up. So I think there is enough for people to learn from, and for regulators and practitioners to leverage to implement smart city models. So with that context, I will maybe now request Dr. John to sort of step in and sort of explain to us, as a practitioner who's already involved in implementing smart cities elsewhere, what is, in your view, is the sort of, the devil is in the detail, obviously. So what goes into planning and implementing a smart city, and how can 5G again be leveraged, as Dr. Hussam explained, to take advantage and accelerate all of this?
Which is a brilliant question. So first of all, there's very few smart cities that lay out and head to put together everything for a whole smart city. They normally start in focused areas where they're going to get a return. one of the exceptions, I think, that I've been involved in is the Qatari Smart Country Programme, which was a greenfield site. And I think the future South Korea floating cities that they talked about earlier this week will be another area where I think they will look at a green field. But what you've heard in the last two speakers is, why are we doing this? And there is a lot of capability, systems and processes that we can bring together. The challenge is, where do we start? Normally it's a money-driven question. So some of the implementations that I've been involved in have targeted transportation. Usually to replace, modernize, and make cheaper the current traffic signal operations and how you move goods around the city. That in itself can actually pay for many of the components that you need within your smart city infrastructure. It pays for your IoT. In our case, we put in LoRaWAN. It cares for your backhaul 5G infrastructure, but it also put in place an awful lot of detail around the data platforms that you need to put in place to help make things come alive. So quite often, everybody focuses on the telecommunications and takes the money from that, forgetting that actually the core of smart cities is about not what you're doing now, but how you're going to enable the next set, the next wave of innovation and use of the technologies and data. So it comes back to environment. When you start to look at the environment that you want to go for, across a number of smart city programs that I've looked at, it's where can we get money from? And it's that cost saving against current costs. And how do we start creating that incubation, entrepreneurial innovation to use technologies? Luckily, there are many different standalone solutions out there that can quite easily gravitate onto a smart city program. The other aspect to look is security. If somebody is looking at smart cities, they want to be able to trust what is there, connect to it, integrate their systems with it commercially, and see that they can actually grow their business or grow the value for citizens on that smart city program. And it's these sort of drivers that then help you move forward. Now, I'll just pick out one of the programs. We identified health and wellness as a key thing. We identified transportation. We identified education. And we identified business engagement as 4 streams that would all bring value, bring importance, and end up with a sustainable smart city program that could then evolve to take on some of the more, some of the lesser value things like wayfaring, how you move around, cultural aspects, but would actually provide funding to allow that to then give a broader mix of citizenship, society together in an implemented way. So cost and value is a key thing. One of the other things that you need to consider is that your existing, if you're a government or if you are a large municipality, that smart cities, as you employ it, may change or disrupt your current other funding from classic delivery mechanisms. And therefore you need to be able to manage and monitor the take-up of the smart city digitization against your other revenue streams. And in some cases, the value of that is that you can accelerate it because you can actually, as a municipality, deliver greater value back to citizens and business. One last thing, and it's a boring techie thing, cities are different. So when you come to choose the technologies, you need to think about what is the city infrastructure. So choosing Wi-Fi, well, Wi-Fi doesn't work very well and penetrate through concrete and in certain locations. So one of the key things about smart cities is choosing the right technologies that allow you to provide the right digital connectivity and coverage in the right locations. Very important if you want to provide ambulance services in an underground car park, but suddenly you have no way of communicating with any of that ambulance so that you can then prepare the hospital for the receipt of an injury. So that's a key concern that you need to be able to assure and assess as part of your smart cities deployment. So data and data governance and architectural governance is a key thing to making sure that your smart city not only comes to life, but stays alive.
Great. No, thank you so much. That was a very, deep practitioner insight into how do you go about implementing smart cities. And of course, there is some real problems you also highlighted as part of your those insights, which include sustainability, which include privacy, which include all those things. We will maybe come back to that one as part when we discuss gaps and challenges. But before we do that, going back to you, Mohammed, within the MENA region, I think, as I mentioned earlier, there has been huge advantage with 5G implementations across all GCC markets now, and many of the other Middle East countries as well. So what are your thoughts on the progress and success that has been achieved in terms of smart city implementation within MENA?
If we look at the MENA region, I would say main successes happened in the GCC region, and starting with Masdar city, which probably was the early adopter, and that's going back quite a few years now when they started off the program in Abu Dhabi. And that's a very good example of a smart city and how they started to experiment and innovate. Dubai, as you know, is considered in the top 10 by certain publications who rate smart cities around the world. So Dubai has been extremely successful, but also it depends what criteria you look at a smart city from. As John was saying, you could be looking at smart city from a very narrow perspective of one possible area to really work on, which is transportation, or it could be you're looking at your infrastructure, like roads, etc., or you're looking at maybe your electricity, utilities, etc. So, but holistically, when we look at overall as a smart city, everything and anything, then I would say, of course, Masdar, and then NEOM is on the rising star. If you know that's with a green field, which is starting with bold and big ambitions and marching ahead quite fast. And Saudi, in generally, I would say, is probably in this region going to be the biggest known smart city country, because all of their mega projects, the new projects which are building cities like Mecca, is totally being transformed on a city level, Riyadh, Jeddah, Medina, etc. But also the big, what I mentioned, the big kind of mega projects like King Abdullah Economic City, and that's going to be quite interesting in the future. NEOM, I just mentioned the Al Faisaliya city itself, and then Amala and Gadaiya entertainment city. So there's quite a few on the horizon, and John also spoke about Qatar as well, and there's some interesting examples there. So it's quite a, I would say, interesting and exciting time. If you take a more holistic view of smart cities in as a country, then you have a number of countries which, from a government services perspective, have become quite smart, already. When you take the narrow look at it from a mobility perspective, then maybe there is some way to go. When you look at utilities, especially electricity, then pretty much most of the countries in the Middle East region, or GCC in particular, are working on smart grid solutions to really bring that advantage. So it's an exciting time. But one thing I would like to mention, which is something that we, from an EY perspective, have used for our own transformation, and I would put it out there as a thought process for anyone who is looking from a smart city perspective for transformations. The three key principles we are applying on ourselves, and we are helping our clients think through their transformation agenda, is number one, humans at the center. And I like to kind of broaden that humans at the center to actually living beings at the center, because we often forget that there are other beings, the animals, etc., that we need to care for and be aware of when we're looking at smart cities. Tech at speed and innovation at scale. And innovation at scale, in particularly, I want to kind of put a focus on, because John mentioned this as well. Smart city is all about innovation, right? And tech is at the center of many of these innovations. Yes, there are some business model innovations as well, but tech is quite you can say, the dominant player when it comes to smart cities. So unless you can do tech at speed, you're going to be obsolete. By the time you get to those kind of old days of waterfall approaches to looking at tech deployment and stuff, especially in smart cities construct, does not really work well, because by the time you get to deployment of a solution, you already have 5 or 6 others who have brought in cutting edge technologies, and obviously innovation scale. But the one point I want to really bring home to everyone, that we should not approach smart cities as a project, because a project mindset means that it's going to be a beginning and an end. And this is what a challenge I've seen in whether it's digital government, smart government, or smart cities. When I read the literature and talk to people, everyone is treating it as like a project. And then, no one's thinking about the business as usual. Okay, this is not about doing something and then we move on and do another project. No, it's about changing the way we are going to live, play, operate, and run cities. So unless we put in place the right governance and the right operating model from the beginning, and yes, we may have different horizons, what we want to do in the next 1 to 3 years, what we want to do in the next 5 to 10 years, and be future proof as well. And we know that there is things happening, and we have that horizon as well for the next 15 to 20 years. We will end up with always costing more and delivering less value.
Great. No, thank you so much, Mohammed. As you rightly mentioned, there has been some progress across various countries within MENA, some already established smart cities, some coming up like NEOM, who we are also been working with through Outvise as well. We've been supporting NEOM as well. So we see a lot of traction and lots of activity there happening now. With this backdrop, we've talked about, why smart cities, we've talked about the standards, we've talked about the body of knowledge, all the great leading practice examples, et cetera. And then we have talked about how we are seeing some of that success already show. Now, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to ask John and Dr. Hussam 2 quick questions before we open to the audience for all the questions they have. So first, John, we briefly touched on some of the challenges and gaps which we could have in a smart city implementation, or in Mohammed's words, as we try and sustain it. So would you like to just highlight some of the things that you've seen in your experience?
So if you're asking quick questions, I guess you want quick answers as well.
Yeah,
So,
just to give everyone a chance to ask more questions. So yeah.
So some of the challenges are getting the right legal framework, especially if you want to have an international base. A lot of the smart city deployments I've worked on are desperately looking for international business to use their platform to help deliver services in their area. So making sure that you've got the right legal platform, and that includes consent management processes that fit within for their country as well as your country. And that may mean that you have to work at a slightly higher legal framework than what you've been used to. Understanding your local infrastructure. The local infrastructure is about skills, talent, the technology, because any inward investment will look at, but can we get the right people? Have they got the right skills to help support our business in that area? So making sure that you've built out that ecosystem to say that we are not just about smart city, but we've got the economy, we've got the education, we've got the training, and we've got the workforce that's ready to help you. Ethics and the ethical stance and the ethical use of information, especially when you're starting to integrate your own local information with open data that you're getting from somewhere else, and then providing that to a third party who might be then looking at data monetization. How do you set up the right controls and framework to manage that information? And then one that nobody really wants to talk about, but unfortunately is a key one, is not everybody can use the technologies that you're going to be delivering in smart cities. So any digital transformation, whether it's in your workplace, it's within citizenship, you then have people who are excluded through their incapacity to understand technology, or through some sort of handicap that they may have. So you need to think about where your stance is in including them and how you make what the services that you're delivering accessible to them. I'm giving you the quick answer.
Great. I'm sure I can already see there is some questions where we need to maybe build on this further. So last question from my side before I hand over to the audience. So we already see, Dr. Sam, this is for you. We have these projections in front of us which show us what is the anticipated market distribution for the Middle East in terms of smart cities, right? So do you feel that this is a good representation of the projections, and do you think things would change with the penetration we are seeing of 5G across the market?
Let me go back a little bit in the question to the previous one. Okay. I'll go back very fast to the 70s and 80s and 90s, where the smart city issue raised by the problem of energy crisis during the 70s and the ozone crisis also during the 80s and 90s, where all bodies of countries, they are looking for CO2 emissions, and many conferences were held. So I will say something about the strategy of all governments in Europe or in Middle East or in Kenya or wherever. So all the world now, they are looking for something beneficial for the nature, to use the natural resources and to save energy, and with the lowest cost to build the sustainable city. What I want to summarize is the sustainability is now the main issue behind driving the smart city concept. So I would also add to the previous saying that regulations, it will be on top, and the strategy of the government will be the first thing to think about before proceeding with smart city projects without any plan. So this strategy will be driven by the vision of the government, so that in the Middle East we have this, in Saudi Arabia we have this in Emirates, and also now currently we have it in Egypt, and I hope so for the remaining market in Middle East. So in summary, so the roadmap will be like this: strategy, regulation, and plan, and then measurement and operation to keep the cities alive, as you said, John. So I'll go back to the slide at the end. So the market now is trendy. In fact, it's increasing as per the 5G implementation. But I will remind you that 5G is not implemented in everywhere. Still in the progress. And the smart city is not only 5G. And if 5G is not built, this does not mean that smart city cannot be built. So,
but it helps accelerate, right?
Yes. So now the trend, I will summarize the trend in the region, the Middle East region. The trend now is to have smart energy management, and smart grid. And the infrastructure project will be less priority, it's not neglected, it's very important, but not more than the energy management issue. So the trend now up to 2030, it will be the same. We'll go through energy management project, energy management distribution project, and infrastructure project. It belongs to smart city, but does not mean that we will go through 5G. We'll go through fiber for the most. We are going to fiber backbone to build this network and connect everything related to smart grid, smart meters. Everything will be connected to this infrastructure. And this is only, and I will recommend that this project will be implemented in all the MENA region, not only in the Gulf or on the GCC. So the whole market now is increasing. In the Middle East now we have currently it's around $30 billion market size. We are expecting a market size of 100 and 120 billion during the coming, let's say 9 or 8 years. So hopefully this market is promising, and the investment is recommended. So we'll see what will happen.
Great, thank you so much for that response. I'd like to now move very quickly to the questions, a couple of which have already come through. I think we can open the floor. Any further questions, please do share them within the chat. So for the first question, which has already come through, which I can read out, is from Samir. I don't know if, Anna, we can allow the questioners to just ask the questions themselves. But I'll read out the one from Samir. So basically, this is commenting on what Mohammed's here described as a continuous process, right? So it's not like the first time that you just implement something and it stays. It's a constant process of sustaining a smart city. So the question really is, what is the message, Mohammed, that you would give to the smart city developers to shift their mindsets towards continuous change and sustaining it?
Extremely important, and I think it is a center to what I was trying to talk about earlier. And the way I like to see smart cities is, let's be very simplistic in our mind. What is smart city about? It's about running our city in a smart way. Now, our cities are already being run. Someone is running our cities. Who is running the city? What processes, what governance, what structures, what technology, what are they using to run those cities? When you start to take a smart city agenda forward, you are actually talking about a complete shift, and in fact, reimagining how you run a city, how you operate a city, how you live in a city, how you play, work, entertain in a city. So when you take a holistic view of that, it includes smart homes, it includes smart offices, it includes pretty much everything. So the shift towards from who is running cities today and who will run cities in the future means you may require different kind of leaders. You may require different kind of mindset. You may require, for sure, different kind of technology, capabilities, skill sets. Unless you think of this as, I am establishing a new way of running a city, and you build the organizational capability that will run that, the operating model to run that, whether it is going to be ecosystem based, where it's more orchestrating everything, putting the rules, the policies, the regulations in place, and enabling the private sector and others to come in and plug into it, or it's going to be centralized where everything is done by the city government, the government itself, whichever model you go for. It requires absolute shift towards a new operating model with new leadership style, with new mindset and capabilities. Unless we put those in place and we treat it as a shift in how we do things rather than a project, we will end up with really taking very little value from this great opportunity we have to improve how we run cities, live in cities, and work in cities.
Fantastic, thank you. That's a very comprehensive response. I think very clear. The next question, which I would like perhaps John to sort of respond to, comes from Hamza, and the observation is that, of course, you know, it's. I mean, I'm just paraphrasing the question a bit, just to go to the gist of it. So of course, it's easier for the, let's say, income-rich countries implementing smart cities to go about doing it, meeting the standards, meeting leading practices, etc., etc. So how does a country which has not so many resources available to itself, for example, Pakistan is the example given, how do they go about implementing smart cities? Is there a lower cost option? Is there a more cost efficient option to sort of join this race? So John, maybe you can respond, and then I can invite other panelists.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So on 3 or 4 countries, 3 or 4 smart city projects, they've got to, they want to do smart cities. That's their intent, their vision. That's the direction that they want to go in, but they don't have the funds. Some have taken the view of, okay, at least we know where we want to go, that direction. What is it that we're doing that's already something along the lines of smart cities? And they've put a sort of more organizational focus. This has usually been municipalities maybe catering for 300 to 500,000 people as citizens. And they've taken the things that they're already doing and said, okay, how can we make this better? How can we use this to then bring in more revenue to pay for more? But what they've done is they've started to put that focus. They've had the vision, everything that that Dr. Hussam talked about, that this is what a smart city should look like. But now they're looking for the levers that says, if we do this, we've then got enough money to do that. If we've got this, we can do enough money to do that. Most of them, the way that they bring in more money is to then open up some of the information that they've got, some of the communications they've got for local businesses to then take advantage of that and to gain a revenue stream from that, if they're allowed to. There are some European countries where the government legislation, the regulations, do not allow them to have a commercial offering in that way. And therefore they've had to look at only how they can cut their costs. So it's about what can you do within your government framework, and how can you develop out that. The third way that I've seen, and it's worked quite nicely, if they've said, this is what we want to do to business, this is why we want to do it, and here's how we think you can take advantage of it. And they've got local businesses to give them the money to then take that forward.
Great. No, thank you so much. I know there's a couple of more questions, but I'm going to just pick one of them because we are running out of time, and the other questions are going to be asked.
Can I just add on something on this which could be quite useful, is
Sure.
not to discourage or I would say encourage looking at PPP models. So
Yeah.
there is a lot more now that private sector is looking to engage in. So public-private partnerships could be a good way because it becomes a service, right? But what John said, I think, is extremely important that we anchor on that. Building that future view of what good looks like, what I would really love to achieve, at least building that view before you go driving down is extremely important, because that way you stay in the direction you want to go to. You know what I want to achieve. It may take me 15, 20, 30 years, but at least that's where I would start. I would definitely invest in building that future view of why you're doing it and what does that future look like, and invest money in that, and then try and invite many different players, whether the private sector or academia, or even collaborations with other smart cities who are quite open to actually sharing their know-how and knowledge and even solutions,
Can I just add one quick soundbite to that? So one smart city, they've got a 2050 vision that they have been promoting for the last 15 years. And in the first 5 years,
which one is that?
Interested. And in the last 10 years, they've been getting the money coming in because there's the vision, they know what they're trying to do, and they've got that persistence, that tenacity to take it through. Sorry for delaying.
No problem.
John, what was the city?
It's Reading in the UK.
Oh, okay. Okay, nice.
Okay. Great. So again, apologies. I know there's quite a few very interesting questions coming. I'm going to just take one of them, and the rest of the questions will still be answered, but perhaps not live. They will be answered offline. So the question, I'm going to sort of merge two questions. One is coming from Samuel Godfrey, and the question is with Dr. Masri mentioned about fiber will be one of the components of smart city. What does that mean in terms? Does GPON or any other technology need to be deployed specific to smart cities? And then the other question coming from Mayank Jain is that with the availability of 5G, will we be able to come out of wired transport? So the question really is that with the onset of new technologies, will the use of others, be changed as well? So, Dr. Masri.
Let me answer this question very fast. Of course, 5G is driven by or supported by a high capacity network of fiber. It should be done like that. For fiber, of course, the technology is not like the current technologies. It needs high capacity fibers. That's why we need to go through the XGPON and XNGPON. Means that now we are 1 gigabit optical network. We are going to 10 gigabit optical network and then to 100 gigabit optical network. This means large capacity of fibers in the ground and higher speed also inside the core network switches. So this is in summary, in brief. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have just, a few minutes to go. So I'd just like to sort of summarize a few key takeaways. So smart cities is not about just the technology. I think we talked about, sustainability. We talked about some real challenges and issues to make it work. So citizen engagement is pretty key. When we talked about the pillars, we talked about, how smart people can make a big difference in both implementing as well as sustaining a smart city. Of course, that needs to be coupled with government policy and delivery of public services in the right way. Secondly, we talked about alignment with vision. John just gave an example of how, a longer term vision is helping drive the right behaviors and implement all the changes in a more systematic way. All of this results in helping prioritize sustainability, because of course with smart city you've got much more richer data points, you've got much more informed decision making, you've got more conscious citizens and all of that, which helps prioritizing sustainability for all living beings, as Mohammed Seer very aptly put it. So it's not just about people, it's about all living beings. I think again, the PPP point was also just raised. Of course, it is not possible for every government to sort of on its own arrange for everything. It does require smart businesses to contribute and help drive those economics as well. So the public-private partnership becomes very critical in implementing and sustaining smart city. Last but not least, it is about open data as well, so that we don't have any privileged few taking advantage of the data available. With open data, of course, there can be more innovation, there can be more inclusiveness and all of that, which can help accelerate and sustain as well. So these were the key takeaways from this session. As I mentioned, if there is questions which are unanswered, or if there's further questions which come through, we will definitely be able to later on answer those as well. Now, before we just wrap up, let me firstly thank all of the participants today for joining the call, and special thanks to all of our panelists for making time and coming up with their very useful, pragmatic, practitioner insights, and of course they remain available through myself. You can email me on the email shown through myself and the Outvise team. We will get in touch and get you any further insights, answers that you're looking for. And last but not least, as we conclude this call, once we finish, you will be prompted to respond to a survey. Please do spare a further couple of minutes just to respond to that survey, because it will help us bring to you more interesting content and webinars in the future as well. So I hope you have enjoyed. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this webinar, and look forward to keeping in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.